Here's the deal. My friends at Brazen have spent the last year writing the book on recruiting chatbots. It's jam-packed with tons of the best practices and examples of companies who are successfully using chatbots to hire the best talent. We're talking companies like Walgreens, USAA, and Presidio. And because you're a listener of my show, they want to send you a free copy of the book. Just head over to brazen.com/chatbots to get a free copy today. You can get a copy sent to your door for postage, or you can download the digital version right now. Don't wait, because the book is flying off the shelves. And as a bonus, if you sign up today, they'll send you their #1 downloaded ebook on winning the war for talent. Again, go to brazen.com/chatbots to get all this for free today. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce Kevin Grossman, who's the president of the Talent Board. He has some information he'd like to share with you.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate being here.
And this October, you guys have a big event.
We do. So on October 14th in Washington, D.C. at the Marriott Wardman Park Hotel, we are running our Candy Symposium and Awards Gala. Every year we do research with hundreds of companies around the world and capture hundreds of thousands of candidate responses to our survey research about their candidate experience from pre-application to onboarding. And then those companies who have the highest positive candidate ratings, we celebrate them throughout the day, and into the evening we have great speakers and sessions, and then awards dinner that evening. So that's what's happening on October 14th.
What time does it start?
It starts at 9 a.m. and goes until 10 p.m.
So it's this October 14th at the Wardman Hotel. The report that you guys generate afterwards, how can folks get that?
So they can go to our site at thetalentboard.org, and everything's available free to download.
And how can I register to come to the event on the 14th?
You go to thetalentboard.org is probably the easiest way. And if you use the code CE19VIP, you can get $50 off our registration for a total of $395 to come for the day.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of The Lauren Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein, and today we are in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the city of brotherly love. I haven't said that yet on the show, but it is definitely the city of brotherly love, and it's a beautiful, hot August day, but the clouds are starting to break a bit. After the weather report, we're going to get sports with our guest, Andrew Gadomski. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks so much for having me, Lauren. Appreciate being here.
I read so much about you. I really enjoyed it. So Andrew is the managing director of Aspen Analytics, which is an analytics and workforce strategy firm. Andrew started Aspen in 2006 because he saw an opportunity to help recruiters stop wasting time on tools that they didn't understand or use. Andrew's firm delivers business intelligence and workforce insights, which are being used by large organizations globally. He's a regular subject matter expert for the Wall Street Journal in global employment and labor, and is a regular speaker at employment and analytics conferences worldwide, just like here today at SRSC. He's also the co-founder of the Talent Congress, which is the data analytics program that powers SRSC and eBrandCon. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you have written a ton of stuff, and I was like, well, where do we start? I know that you're talking today about how do we use analytics and automation in recruiting? And I think probably getting there is a good place to go. When your background in analytics is incredibly sophisticated. I mean, you understand, kind of the nuts and bolts, if you will. What has made this tool more common in our work lives? Like how now can we use it when 10 or 20 years or whatever it was, we didn't really have access to this?
Well, in your question is the answer, which is accessibility. So what has happened is that we've surrounded ourselves with data so much that we naturally want to analyze it. Even something as simple as how we manage our fitness, how we manage our eating habits, how we travel. We're using data and then thereby analytics to then visualize where we went, how long were we there, how did we do, what calories did I count. And so it's pretty logical to assume that, well, why can't I do that in human resources? Why can't I do that in talent acquisition. And so it's become a natural question that leaders are saying is, if I can see how long it's going to take for a pizza to arrive, why can't I figure out, or you figure out, how long it's going to take for a person to show up for a job? Now, that may be a fair question, right? But the expectation is now there, and it's all on our phones. So there's a lot of drive around more accessibility, right? And we've kind of demystified this. Analytics isn't hard to understand anymore. We see it every day. So the natural set of questions would be, well, if everybody else has it, and I know it's accessible on my phone, why can't I do this inside recruiting? And that's why I think there's a big push.
So is it that we have the ability to capture more data?
Well, there's seriously more data. There's definitely more data that's out there now, right? Because we're using we're using these tools and these different platforms on a regular basis. But the ability to capture said data and then visualize it has become a lot easier in the past decade.
And how do you? Because I know a lot of times people will say, "Well, this is this happened in the data, and so this is what it means." How do you kind of make that distinction between causation and correlation for recruiting?
When we do causation versus correlation first, correlation is just going to see whether or not we've got any kind of parallel between, this trend is going up and then this other trend is going up, and one has something to do with the other. There's a connected variable, right? So a good example might be our time to fill is going down, but at the same time, the number of candidates that we're getting within 7 days is going up, and at the same time, the number of candidates, and we're increasing the number of candidates that convert to interview, right?
And our cost could be going up too.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
So all those things
together, we could say, oh, they correlate. Now, you could probably then, to figure out whether or not they causate, you'd have to do modeling. So what you would do is you would
say more about that. That's interesting.
So a modeling exercise would be where we would get, we would look at you would take a year's worth of candidate data, and you would look at all these different trends that are happening. You say, those seem to be, correlating to each other. I wonder if they're connected. You then go ahead and you take all the different variables associated with this problem. So if we wanted to know that time to fill was going to reduce because I spent more money, I would look at all the ways that I'm spending the money and when I'm spending the money, and you would go ahead and put those into 100 little columns. Then you would do the same thing with all your time to fill data, and that would go into another 100 little columns. And what you do is you then run different statistical models to see whether or not these variables relate to each other over and over and over again. And so you do that modeling
with a certain percentage of accuracy.
Yeah. And so what you would see is you might see it for example, in a linear regression model. So there's dozens of different statistical models. But let's just say that there's a correlation that does that a significance kicks off after I do a model in linear regression. I can say, when that goes up, that actually does go up. But when these things are going down or staying the same, and this is up, this thing over here is still going up. Excellent. So you would do an initial modeling, and you would look for some sort of significance between variable 1 and variable 2. Then you would say, I now need to run more models. So not using linear regression anymore, you'd use multivariate regression, or you'd use nearest neighbors. There's a dozen different models.
Right.
You would then run all those different models, and then you would start looking for how much error occurs in each of these models.
And then, to say that there's causation, you'd want to get as close to zero as possible.
Right. And so what you might find is that across 4 or 5 different models, our error, and there's a number of ways to measure error. This isn't a class on analytics, but there's a number of ways to measure error. But in several models, if I show a low rate of error, you can start saying, I've got real causation here.
Right.
Every time that goes up, this goes up 98% of the time. And I've tested that several different ways, right? Now, I could have seen it on a graph earlier where one went up and the other one went up. The difference is if I scale it, if I was to do it for a long time, would that pattern continue? And when you do modeling, you're then going to say, you know what? That's going to happen all the time. So let's continue to push on variable one. Then what you would do is you would say, I know if I spend more, right? If I spend more, my time to fill goes down. Eventually, it probably plateaus.
Right.
And what you're doing is when you're doing the modeling you can use simulations. And you'll see actually that flattening. And they say, you know what, we can spend 65% more than we are and we'll get 65% more lift. After that,
it's done.
It's kind of done.
Right.
Like we're wasting money.
Right.
This is the type of work that most analysts do for marketing, operations, advertising and so on around making spend decisions, making larger decisions around production. We just don't tend to do it that often in recruiting, and it's harder to do in employment after someone gets hired. But the velocity of data inside recruiting is big and fast.
Right.
We got hundreds of candidates applying every day. We got interviews moving around. We got all kinds of blog posts and Twitter posts going out, people reacting. There's lots of data to kind of say, if I consistently put a message out, are people reacting to it? Do they convert? Does that reduce our cost? There's plenty of data for us to analyze to know that the decisions that we're making are good ones.
And so when you start an analysis, do you start with a hypothesis or do you start with looking at the data?
When you start solving a problem, what you want to do is you want to get to a sharp question or a series of sharp questions. And then what you say is, okay, in order for me to give you enough answers to those sharp questions and then give you an insight, I probably need to look at some statistics from several different places, group them together once I have that data and I have those statistics, and then talk about what does that tell me.
So you would look at my time to hire for all my jobs. I've got 30 different job categories for the last year.
Yeah, so you might say, well, I'm not hiring my Java developers fast enough. Okay, well, let's just say that the average time to fill is 3 months. But when I actually graph that over time, maybe I would use different visualizations to actually show that, well, actually, the median is 3 months, right? Or the mean is 3 months, but the median is less than that. In fact, you guys, for 25% of your hires, you do them within 2 months, right? And for all your hires, we end up doing it within 100 days. But for whatever reason, your average is skewed because a lot of them go towards more 100. Okay, great. Then we'll go ahead and we'll look at, well, does that exist in any place else in your business? Because your business isn't made up of just Java developers. Mm-hmm. Your business is made up of a lot of things. Okay, all of your jobs follow this trend within the standard deviation. So you're complaining.
What does standard deviation mean for folks listening?
Standard deviation is take the 10 fastest percent and the slowest 10% and kind of throw it out. So we're kind of looking in the middle, right? And then we would say, well, I'm not operating in the middle, right? But did I fall within that 10% either way? If you did, you're still okay. When you fall outside of the standard deviation, that's statistically significant. So you're going to always have outliers from an average, right? Then the question is when you're outside the average, how far are you outside the average? If you're within one standard deviation outside the average, it's not statistically significant. If you're within one standard deviation, if you're outside, you say, how often is that happening? Because those outliers shouldn't happen that often. So that's why I say standard deviation. We gotta say, well, we're not going to be perfect every time, but when we're imperfect, we're usually imperfect within a range. Were we imperfect within that range for this hire? Yes, not a problem.
Just kind of putting a pause on what you're saying, what I'm hearing is that, my top level concern as the CEO is, my software engineering manager is complaining to me about how slow this is taking to get right. And I'm not really looking at this in a granular level. You're saying, wait, Lauren, you got to look at this at a granular level. You've got to really, you can't just say, well, this is the problem.
Right.
Let's really look at the data and say, is this a problem and is this the problem?
Right.
And how would you compare this problem to the other problems?
Right. So you think the problem is that you're not fast and you're not
It could be
hiring
just he's
people
the
fast
one
enough.
who's complaining.
Right. And let's just assume that complaining happens, because it happens, right?
Right.
But what I would look at and say, okay, let's look at the other parts of the organization. What's interesting is that you actually staff this group about the same as you staff the rest of your groups that are, say, IT oriented or technically oriented. So you say it's not fast enough, but I've got a lot of data here that says that your organization accepts this speed on a regular basis. So now the question is have you resourced differently with this group to actually impact speed? No, we've resourced it the exact same. So you're expecting the same amount of resources to produce higher level of productivity on a group, but you haven't given it any importance. No, we haven't. Well, maybe we should take a look at whether or not you need to resource differently.
Sure.
So if
Yeah.
I resource differently, great, Andrew, I'll put 3 recruiters on it. Now we're going to go ahead and go 3 times faster. Maybe. So the sharp question isn't how do I go faster? It's Java develop is important to us because we're managing these different products that we're developing, and we don't have the skills to go as fast as I would like in development. The sharp question is, how much more do I have to resource in order to shorten the time to get interviews here?
So
Great.
I'm glad we had this conversation, because I think for me now it kind of demystifies like really what's underneath analytics.
Right.
When we're talking about like the numbers and what does that mean and how does that influence my business. And then you talk about automation. So tell me, like, how would you describe using automation in recruiting and combined with analytics?
Well, so typically with automation, we're trying to usually, not always, we're usually trying to make sure that something happens without human intervention on a very regular basis, usually 100%. So a simple automation is someone applies to a job and your applicant tracking system automatically sends a thank you note. Like within seconds or within a day,
Sure.
right? You set it and something automatically occurs. Fine. Well, at the same time, you can take that process and you can use what's known as artificial intelligence, and there's a definition for that.
Yeah.
But basically what it means is a machine is going to act rationally and or like a human. Okay, so let's use automation rather than going back and forth with a series of emails about scheduling a candidate for an upcoming interview. Well, I know that the manager has openings on their calendar, and I don't have access to the candidate's calendar. It's unlikely that you actually do. So why don't we just let those two talk together using a chatbot, and then let the systems kind of figure out back and forth automatically. Oh, rather than me going on the phone and asking Lauren, when are you available, a chatbot is doing that for me and then automatically putting it on the calendar of the hiring manager and sending a reply to the recruiter saying, hey, Lauren is going to meet with Chris. Fine, that's automation.
So what do you find in a recruiter's day, their 100% of their day, how much are they spending on recruiting? How much are they spending on administration and all that back office stuff?
All things being equal, the majority of a recruiter's job, not a sourcer, let's be careful, okay? So someone who is, let's assume that we already have candidates, be it people who are applying. The majority of their job is moving those candidates through a process of assessment and then informing the manager so they can make a better decision. I'd say that 50% of their job can be administratively focused. I'm not saying it's not low value, right? But when we're talking about is you're keeping in alignment with a set of processes or a promise for a service. I have to administer that.
And is that where you look? Because I find that sometimes it's more, in my experience, and that while there are sourcers, a lot of recruiters do source.
Yeah.
And there would be a huge value in shrinking that 50% down to as close to zero as possible. Is that your...
You can, but what I would say is where are the bottlenecks that we need to remove so we can increase the value of the work for the recruiter but also increase the experience for the candidate, increase the experience for the hiring manager. And contrary to what an HR technology provider might offer, there's no one quick answer, right? What I would recommend is you need to make sure that your recruiters have got human interaction, right? That allows them to use their voice and their mind as the majority of their work. That usually increases their respect of their work back from the hiring managers that they partner with and the candidates they end up recruiting, and it makes them feel good about their job and increases retention. The more you make them a robot, the more they will feel like a robot. So don't give them robotics. You can put a robot next to them and say, this is my robot. I gave you a robot because I want you to be human. I want you to interact. I want you to emote and do the things that...
Not go back and forth between a candidate and the hiring manager on when they're going to interview.
Right. Because at the end of a business day, it's training. It's like, I spent all this time trying to get one person to get back to me on a schedule,
right,
versus how many people did I talk to today about our brand?
Yeah.
And that's how I used to measure my recruiters years ago. I would say everybody on this team every single day, your promise to me is that you talk to 4 people every day who've never heard of our brand or aren't educated about our brand, and you have brought them along. I said, if you guys are doing that, everything else will work itself out.
Right, right.
I said 20, 30 people a week.
I couldn't agree more.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if recruiters are having conversations with people,
right,
then you're making, that's why there are recruiters.
Yeah, and their level of interest, of who they're talked to, they can be a passive candidate, never heard of us, blah, 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 or they can be active. I'm not a big fan of, well, we have to treat passive candidates or active candidates in different ways. Stop. You strip the humanity of recruiting out when you start categorizing candidates.
Yeah.
We create a lot of bias quickly when we do that.
So you wrote an article, and I really liked it. You were talking about when to reach out to candidates. And you talked about, and you said, stop recruiting people who hit their anniversary a few months ago.
Yeah. Because
the data showed that people leave their jobs after at their anniversary.
That's right.
Say more about that.
So it's best to illustrate with an example. So someone joins a business in June, but that business also is on a fiscal calendar that is January to December. Well, we know that data already, right? On every candidate, especially if they're working for a public company, we're going to know what the fiscal calendar is. So that also means we probably know when they got their bonus, which is usually within 90 days of the start of the fiscal calendar from the previous year. We typically know when their reviews are. The reviews tend to be usually within a couple of months of the end of the year or after the beginning of the year, or usually mid-year. So a mid-year review on a fiscal calendar that's January to December never happens in October. It's supposed to happen in June or July.
So in my ATS, I can have a candidate record with, I know their hire date because it says it on their LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
I know the company's financial calendar because it's probably common knowledge. I know when they're doing reviews because, I know
when they're probably getting their bonus. So
right.
I actually understand also the operation. I also know when they're mid-project.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so now the question is why would I call a candidate that I probably have to pay a high sign-on bonus to make up their bonus that they're leaving?
Right.
Why would I call somebody knowing that they're probably not really motivated to leave because they're probably midstream on a project towards a promotion?
Yeah.
Right? When I could say, I'm just using some basic logic here that calling these people at this time of year, they're probably going to call me back a little bit faster. Yeah. And they're going to be a little bit more motivated to talk.
Right.
And they might be cheaper for me to acquire.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Right.
I mean, I think, and then the whole, well, if they got money for school and when they have to pay that back, all those things, I loved it because I had gotten a seminar from a woman at University of Maryland, PhD in analytics, maybe 4 years ago, and she was talking about the Target baby. You know the Target baby?
Yeah.
And so the Target baby, for those who are listening, was a postcard that Target sent out to women who had bought certain things, saying, "Hey, you're pregnant, and we know you're pregnant." And I thought, well, could we set something up where I would know when is the right time to call a candidate? Because in my experience as a recruiter, when I called somebody on the right day, it was like butter,
Right.
super easy. Like,
Super
oh
easy.
my God, I'm so glad you called me today. I am so ready.
Right.
And you're like, cool. She said yes. She said all we needed was like about 1,000 data points, person's Twitter account, and ask them like 2 or 3 questions, and she could get that statistically significant.
Yeah, you would run a
Is
model.
anyone doing stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, so what? And before I forget, you asked a particular question. When it comes to their anniversary date,
Yeah.
realize that there's a significance of. So you have a fiscal calendar, you got a bonus calendar. Those are all important. But people like being in a job for at least a year, or hitting that 18-month, or hitting
Right.
that 24-month mark.
Because on their resume, they want it to look like not 23 months, but 24 or 25.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Because on
There's
the
a
thing, it'll
social-
say 2 years. And
Yeah, there's a social acceptance
Yeah.
associated with the anniversary.
absolutely.
So
But
taking
2 years in a day, hey, man, they're fair game.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, why would I call if I know someone's coming up on a 2-year anniversary 3 months from now? Maybe I'm going to start kind of hammering them a little bit on a relationship, and then say, you know what? I think I got something coming up. How you feeling? I don't know. My boss isn't really engaging with me right now. Okay, well, look, you're not. They're going to hit you up because you're coming up on 2 years. I'll tell you what. Why don't you give me a call after you had that conversation?
Right.
And then it's like, did you have that conversation yet? No, they're not talking to me.
Or even being proactive and sending emails out to those people saying, hey, I know that your 2-year anniversary is coming up in 3 months. Give us a call after that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a job, or I'll have something available to you.
And that's all style, right? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it could be direct or indirect, but knowing
Those
what's
data
going
points
on-
are really valuable.
Yeah, the data point and understanding how to leverage the data point, right? That's right. It's like, okay, I have a data point. Why am I not leveraging that? I mean, or why am I deliberately putting my business in a position where they would have to incur more
No,
expense?
I thought it was brilliant. Out of all the things that I had read, I thought that was the easiest. To me, that's low-hanging fruit. Because
Yeah.
you look at somebody's LinkedIn page, and automatically you get a few of these things.
Oh,
You
right.
like you don't have to have like some big piece of software.
One of the ways that we'll look at people say, how do I measure a sourcing team? And I'll say, I want to see how much. I want to know exactly how much sign-on as a percentage of first-year compensation your sourcing team produces versus candidates who don't come from the sourcing team. And they're like, what? And I'm like, look, your sourcers are in a position to find candidates where the sign-on bonus can be low.
Right.
There's all kinds of people they could pick up the phone
Sure.
or reach out to and call.
We only have another minute or so,
Yeah.
but I wanted to just quickly address, are there any tools that are doing this kind of prediction around what people are doing on their Twitter accounts or on social media to say, hey, when they're more warm?
There's a handful that are out there that say, hey, based on the social listening, this candidate might be more interesting. There's, I think they rebranded themselves. Maybe it's Claro Analytics, the former Jobberate. They do social listening. HR Marketer has a social listening platform that's similar. They don't use it for candidates. And then, who's the other guys? But there's a handful that are playing in this space. But, Engage is another example. So Engage uses, they do social listening based on a company and say, well, that company is in trouble, so maybe you should call these candidates, right? But, what I would say is the anniversary date and the fiscal calendar, it is money in the bank.
Right. So we've got to wrap up, but Andrew, how can folks reach you if they want to?
You know what? AspenAnalytics.io is an easy way to get a hold of us. And for me, I'm a LinkedIn guy, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just give me a follow. The other thing to do is find somebody who knows me and say, hey, I want to talk to Andrew. And then they'll send me a note, and I'm always willing to take a phone call from someone who's a friend.
Nice. Andrew Gadomski, thank you so much for being
Thanks
on the
so much.
show. And you've been listening to The Lauren Epstein Show here at the Social Recruiting Strategies Conference in Philadelphia, check out Social Recruiting Strategies Conference on the web. They've got tons of great information, and all of the presentations are going to be made available to the conference attendees. And I'm sure, Andrew's yours is as well, right?
Yeah, so Talent Congress is a premium product for SRSC, and so that's available for download for anybody who comes and to that particular session. But if people are really interested, I'm always happy to forward things.
Buy it, get all this stuff. This is all really amazing things that are going to help you recruit. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the next episode of Lauren Epstein Show. Hi, this is Lauren Epstein with The Lauren Epstein Show, and I'm sitting here with Cara Mignelli, who is the leader of the Social Recruiting Strategies Conference and the eBrand Cons, and they've got some exciting news. They're having Talent Acquisition Week in January of 2020. Can you tell us about that, Cara?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Lauren. We're really thrilled about 2020, which sounded really far off when I was a kid, but thrilled to be planning for 2020. And so our vision is to take a step into the future of talent acquisition, and we're really thrilled to be hosting our flagship event, SRSC, which is the Social Recruiting Strategies Conference, as well as eBrandCon, along with a new event, Talent Sourcing Strategies Summit. We'll be hosting those 3 separate events together at the same venue in San Francisco this coming January 28th through the 30th. And we're providing an opportunity for people to be collaborative and learn new things. If you buy a ticket to any of our 3 events, we're going to allow people to go from one event to another. So the agenda doesn't overlap, except for we have some great opening keynotes, and we have a shared expo floor, and we're planning fun networking events as well.
This is exciting. I could see companies sending their entire teams of recruiting folks to learn and then network. What a great opportunity. And how can folks register now?
They can visit talentacquisitionweek.com and sign up for more information. Registration will open and the full agenda will be published.
Fantastic. Well, we're really looking forward to it. Go to talentacquisitionweek.com and sign up now.
Thanks, Lauren.
If you want to sell more to HR and TA professionals, we can help you bring your brand into the ears of over 100,000 decision makers around the world. To advertise on this and other shows, contact us at lauren@laurenepstein.com.